started day one of Symbolic Studies. We have in the room three of us who are going to play different roles as facial. Then we have numerous guests.
Okay.
So Sumer and Jitin from TNT, right?
Okay.
So and between three of us, just to introduce, between Malvika, Satya, and me, we'll be playing different roles in the discussion. And so I'll be zooming in. I'll be examining the details of this threads that we discussed. Satya will be zooming out, and Malvika will be connecting different things that we're talking about, so that it continues to make sense to us.
That sounds good.
So, Satya, I'd like to invite you to start zooming out so that we can begin.
So from a very high level perspective, from a bird's eye view, the question that we are trying to look at is how can we have a conversation between those who speak very different symbolic languages and also who perceive the world or objects in sort of different ways. I think our conjecture is that everybody is making sense. Everybody's trying to make sense. At a fundamental level, everybody's trying to make sense. And the way we approach different things when we are trying to make sense, what is the processing that we use to make sense of those? And we are trying to examine it specifically from an artist's perspective and somebody who's like on the scientific side, if you like, mathematicians, physicists. They have a very different a language, different symbols that they use. So that's what we will try to examine today. And we're going to do that using thought experiments, which
so are we all familiar with what thought experiments are?
No.
So thought experiments are, let's say, scenarios that we set up in which the scenario represents the entire philosophical problem, right? So if it works true for the scenario, it works true for the whole problem. So that's the assumption.
Okay.
Right. So we will demonstrate as we go along today. So the
first thought experiment we had. Should we just jump in?
Yes.
Okay. So we had the example of Murugan, who is looking at a movie poster, and on the poster he sees a yellow field of flowers with Simran, the heroine, running towards Raj, who's the hero, in the frame. The question is, how long does it take for Murugan, the viewer, to know what the movie poster is communicating?
I'm going to go back to that question, and I'm just looking at it again, and I'm wondering if the question has to be reframed, because if we are looking at the question of modeling, how do we model a question to examine attention? Can we look at, shouldn't the question be, how long does it take for Murugan to know or to realize that it's a movie poster, or to understand that it is a movie poster?
But as Satya pointed out, what we are trying to do is make sense, right? So our objective is to make sense. So if we know that it is a movie poster, it doesn't help us know of what the movie poster is saying.
Okay, so we are going into the detail of what it is communicating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, it's like the first thing that happens when you see a movie poster, or if you see an object, what happens? In this case, Murugan is seeing a poster. What's the first thing that happens, right?
Yeah, what is the first thing that happens?
So
I would imagine that the first thing that happens is recognition, that it is a poster for a movie.
Right.
Right. So after recognition, does sense making begin immediately? Do we after recognizing, or is there an intermediary phase when we figure out if we are interested in the first place?
But isn't there something even before that? Before that, I'm seeing some blob in front of me, right? I guess shouldn't we start there?
So we recognize the blob, and and then before we try to be interested, you are saying there's something else.
Yes, what I'm saying is if I just see something in front of me, I'm just a person walking and I see a square. Even before knowing that it's a movie poster, there are steps, are there not? And would I see those steps differently if I'm an artist versus if I'm an observer? Would I see the steps differently?
So, would you like to spell out the steps? Because I'm slightly lost in terms of the steps you're referring to.
Okay, for example, the first thing is I am walking and I see a blob in front of me.
Yeah.
Something caught my attention.
Yeah.
Something caught me and I turn. I'm looking at something. The first thing I see, maybe, it's a very subjective thing. Each person may see different things. But I guess what we need to be trying to do is to have a generalized idea of what happens when someone sees something, even before recognizing what it is.
I think part of that process is distinguishing something that's kind of a figure from some other field that's a background, right?
Yeah.
So we think of the blob, and then the blob is defined against this space around it or behind it or enveloping it from which it emerges. That's how I imagine the process to be. To first figure out the difference, or to be caught, like Satya was saying, to be caught in that difference between the blob and the things that are not the blob.
Right.
So don't these things happen very fast for humans? Because I can imagine, Don, the way you are spelling out the steps. Maybe for a machine, it would be for a machine trying to see. It would happen in a series of sequentially logical steps like that. But for humans, doesn't it happen very fast, and don't we already know things before having to process it logically?
Yes, I agree.
Yes. So, Jinal, what would you say? What would you say? What happens after we see the blob? Let's say the poster. We see that there is some kind of a something. We haven't really recognized yet that it is a poster.
I think I don't the Indian name for this, but it's in Indian, like in Hindi, we will call it bhava. Bhava produces, the simulation to even perceive it after. Like it's just that I have seen some visual and then something happens inside, and which makes me even think about it. So logic comes after. That's what I think.
Right. So it comes first.
So you're saying we don't even make sense intellectually what we saw, but even before that the bhava comes. Something communicates to us which is not even yet in words. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and it depends. Like sometimes only logic comes first, but I think also behind that there is some bhava.
Yeah. So even though we didn't realize that there is a yellow field of flowers, we see something yellow, we see some figures. We haven't figured out yet what are these figures. Still something got communicated to us before even figuring out exactly the detail.
So the feeling, we feel things before we know what they are.
Yes.
So, Meher, would you like to add something to this?
I'm actually, you know what? When you said that thing, I kept thinking that what poster would it be? because all I see is, okay, so I've actually pulled out a couple of posters just to refresh my memories.
Right.
I think to me it is a lot to do with. It also depends on. To me, it is a lot to do with the composition part of it. The moment I get into it, it looks to me like a. It can be an abstract if it is, but here we're talking about a very particular figure and a very striking color. You know, it may be different in all other posters, but what you're referring is uh, two figures in a yellow field and some typography written up there. You know,
Right.
Right.
with my memories and experience, I know that this is two film actors. They can be a cheating in the text, which I will actually perceive once I go closer.
Right.
Uh, but I exactly know that there is no cheating in the text. Their memories are serving well, and all I see is that there is something. I mean, it could have been something else or any other language, uh, but I think typography comes later in this particular case.
So you are saying that the precision of the designer is
Yeah,
is is the first thing that will make an impression on. So the way the designer specifies then what is the most important sentiment, let's say, in the
absolutely.
poster. So it's a design that you notice.
Well, I come from a visual background, so that's the first thing that will happen to me.
Right. Right.
But I completely understand about the expression, and when she said bhav, I think I kind of completely agree with what she's trying to say.
There is an overall mood that comes through.
Yeah.
So, but do you think the mood comes through before or after observing the technicalities of the presentation?
No, before that mood comes in,
Right,
Yes.
right. Okay.
and then you will actually start kind of pinpointing certain things which may irritate you, could have been better, but you kind of like analyze it from a larger perspective, but also looking at minute details which you're not happy with, probably. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
So if one wants to examine attention, we are looking more at this initial response, whether it's a visual or whatever medium it is. If I mean, a poster is after all a visual medium, so that's the first thing we're going to see, the way it is composed, and the visual elements will be crucial in um, uh, measuring or defining the kind of attention it grabs from the viewer.
Yeah.
And the eventually the very fact that it is a poster or whatever it may be, determining what it is or what it's trying to communicate will rely on comprehension and not so much attention.
But if you don't pay attention that there is a blob, you don't even go there. Now, and the second thing I want to say is, if you don't pay attention to the details, you lose the communication, right? Because it might communicate the wrong thing. Like someone just said that the visual is there, but if some typography is wrong, you could be cheated into thinking that it's something else. So if you didn't pay attention, you could get the wrong message.
But what Jinal was saying about the bhav, the bhav needs a listener also, right? So the mood also needs a listener. So shouldn't we be zooming in into at which point does the mood become clearly apparent? So that is the first instance of communication. That is, even before, let's say, knowing what the movie poster is communicating, before that, it is the question of what is a movie poster feeling like.
Yeah. And also it needs my memory connected with that particular, because it's I think he was right when he was saying that if it's a very recognized memory, then I would have something very common to perceive. I will be sharing the same memory with somebody else also seeing that particular poster.
Correct.
Right.
So I think zoom in into that particular question, which is, how and how long it does take for Murugan to know what the movie poster is communicating. So it also, matlab, it depends on what all things that also we can keep in focus.
Yeah, that's precisely the thing. Now, the question that we're trying to frame is actually addressing an aspect of comprehension. So,
Right.
because we are looking at what the movie poster is communicating, and for that we need to get into that second level of
Right.
beyond attention. What is it doing? And like someone was mentioning the typography, whether you can be cheated into reading something else when it's actually supposed to mean something different.
Yes.
If you're trying to frame a question, then are we going to consider these two layers of arriving at it? One where you are looking at it more in terms of the first level of attention, and then once you are attentive to it, you are responding to the visual elements, and then you get into the comprehension of what it's trying to say.
But
That makes sense.
I still feel that the mood is becoming apparent to us even before we are being attentive to it.
No, I would say the opposite. Two things. First thing is it catches your eye. Second thing is you feel the mood. Third thing is you start trying to comprehend exactly the details. Would anyone disagree with that?
No, yeah. So, for example, if you look at architecture, for example, if you go from a poster to an architecture, don't you think the moment I step into a space, whether or not I am attentive to it, the space will make it will be clear to me what the space feels like.
But isn't there a distinction between architecture and a visual in front of you?
So that distinction is not very clear to me, because basically we are looking at experience.
Right. When you experience a space, it's of course defined by the visuals around that space, but yet the mood, the feeling is a little more apparent, I feel, in a space. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the space could play a role even when we are approaching this poster, like depending on whether I'm seeing it at a bus stop, whether I'm seeing it at an Indian store. So already, like my mind has started connecting location with experience, with the mood I'm in, to visualize or even take note of this blob.
Right.
So this introduces a new parameter into our question. Where we are looking at the poster, where is the poster?
Yeah.
So it's not just about the poster, it's also about where we are looking at the poster.
That's true.
I don't know this aspect about space. I don't know if it has so much to do with the location, because sometimes you can be completely oblivious of where you are if you're very preoccupied with something else. So, I mean, if you just take the world we live in, and there may be a day when we are looking or observing some detail of a tree that is, in our house, and we don't see it on other days. So, it's not that was different. So, so attention is, I think, completely dependent on the mind.
So we are talking about two things here, attention and an impression, I think. So the space makes an impression, and attention is something we apply to understand, let's say, some detail, let's say the poster. But the impression is happening irrespective of your attention.
So there's two things.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just two levels. So one is from the external and one is from the internal. So space is from the impression is external and attention is internal.
Internal, that's true.
Yeah.
and also then we will have to find the criteria for that impression to take place.
Yeah, so what would that be? So how would we rephrase the question now? How long does it take for Murugan to know what the movie poster is communicating? How would we rephrase it?
So we'll need a couple of okay, we spoke of attention. I'm just typing in the.
We had 5 things. First was space, second was attention, third was mood, fourth was comprehension, and fifth was memory or socialization.
So you already spoke of impression, okay.
Okay, so the things we need criteria for are definitely impression. We will need. We will have to define criteria for that to even grab attention.
Right. And then,
what else would need criteria?
So I think we also had space, like Kritika was mentioning just now. Where are we located?
Yeah, that doesn't that come into impression? The location is what will impress.
Ah, yeah, you're right. Yeah, impression and space would be the same thing. Yeah, that's right. And then we talk of bhava, the mood.
That's.
So the mood is also included. So the impression. Jinil, would you agree that the mood is the impression?
Can you repeat?
The mood is the impression. That's the. So can we combine it with impression? The mood and the impression that the space makes upon us.
Yeah, from what I understand so far, mood and impression seem to be the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. So then we need criteria for examining impression. How do we go deeper into understanding impression? So what is involved in this context of impression? So how do we talk about it?
Actually, the criteria is so I think the criteria is actually quite wide for this, as I experience, like if I examine my own experience with the mood perceiving thing, then I will have a lot of backups, like my cultural backup, then my personal memory, then my a lot of things are there, and how do I see, or my choices are. I mean, all these things actually make a mood.
So it's not external.
It's not at all.
Okay.
But then doesn't the weather make a difference? For example, right now I'm in a very grey place, and it makes a difference on how I perceive things rather than if I'm in India where it's very sunny, right?
Yeah,
so that's external.
See, the criteria is already there like that, but also the same thing for a different person in a grey mood and a monsoon. If it's raining, they will perceive it differently. The mood can be different, with seeing the same thing.
Exactly.
So, but we will have to consider both. So one is internal criteria and the other is external criteria, because what you come with in terms of experience has to be taken into account, plus where you are located and what that is creating for you to respond.
Can we call it like long-term criteria and short-term criteria, as in like the moment say I fought with somebody 2 minutes before I'm having this conversation, I'll be in a different mood. So that would be like, I would say, a short-term criteria, and the long-term will be my perception from a longer time, like whatever I associate to moral standing, ethical standing, and awareness, etc.
So you are saying that internal criteria is short-term?
No. I think these are two separate things.
Yeah. I think I'm wondering if we should just add time as an added criteria, independent of internal or external. Because won't the time be constant for that moment of attention? because at that point, what you are internally is going to match the same time of, the time frame of your experiencing an external criteria.
Although it's like, when people say they get lost in something, in looking at something or experiencing something, then wouldn't the time be a flexible thing?
Yeah.
And kind of a function more of the mood rather than something that imposes a structure on the mood? I'm not sure how to get around
because
that.
like we were like Sumir, we were discussing, once you are immersed in something, you can lose sense of time, right? I think
Yes.
you're referring to that on, yeah.
But this sense of time, isn't it a constant, or is it variable?
I think
the measure of time, the measure of time might be constant, but the experience of time, actually, yeah, it might be variable. So it's yeah, I don't know, because Sumir, you're trying to say something, you got cut off.
No, I just went back to two illustrations where I'm trying to change the context completely here.
Yeah.
Okay? Like imagine we are in Russia, and the typography is saying something completely different, and you are in a group of all Russians. You see, and you are coming from a very different perspective, and they are coming from a very different perspective, and so and you're walking through the streets, and suddenly you found this poster, of course translated in Russia. So how will that be? Like how all those things will matter there, because the context is completely different. But you have your own old memories which will keep it protected in a very strange way that nobody else really knows what you are looking at it, and maybe they are looking at it from a very different perspective, and you are seeing it from a very experience, or I don't know how. I'm just trying to create that.
So you're saying you are talking about an experience that goes before literacy.
Yes.
So, for example, so you are saying that typography, if it's of a foreign language, then how is it that it would be experienced?
Yeah, even I mean, imagine everything is gray around when you started talking about the color, the sun, and the cloudy day. I'm imagining not that sunny in Russia in that sense, and so how does that sort of change the way you approach to the same subject you are familiar with? Number one. Number two, and you also realize that you are the only one who's realizing this, and nobody else really knows what it is.
Right. You're coming with your memories and your nostalgic baggage.
And it's a very straight line. It has not been. It is pretty pure at that moment, where all around you is a neutral world around there, right? So it is. And I'm keeping the image. I mean, as we know, the image is extremely warm. The two people hugging each other, and it's all like it's very Indian in that sense, like how it has been classified or whatever, sunny and warm and kind of humble at the same time. So I mean, these are just little things. Like, would my perception change, and this kind of narrative what we are trying to kind of work out with, like comprehend, like first come this and then a chain reaction. Would that chain reaction be applied there as well?
So I'll just try to break down your input, or what you just contributed, into what we already had on a plate. So it's a foreign landscape. It's a foreign landscape. It's a foreign landscape, and the material is the same, which we are trying to look at here, right? But how does the landscape and it's being foreign in nature, how does that affect the impression? Like, how does it affect the capacity of the space, the capacity of the architecture to make an impression?
So here I would think maybe the internal criteria that we have, they are a bit stronger, and they will take over first, and then probably whether we perceive the poster as happy, sad, or whatever, that would be dependent on whether I'm seeing it in Russia and it's gray or it's raining there, and the other factors probably.
So you're saying actually that the internal and external have different weights depending on the situation. So suppose I'm in India seeing this poster, seeing the poster will be different obviously than seeing it in Russia, but in Russia probably I see the poster, it draws me more quickly because there's something familiar and nostalgic about it, whereas in India I'm bombarded by the similar kind of images, so it doesn't necessarily attract my attention that much as it might have in Russia. And I can vouch for that, because when I'm abroad and suddenly I see something it just catches my eye if it's something related to my past or something in India, right?
Yeah, so I feel like a language that we can understand maybe.
Yeah. Are we saying that when something becomes foreign, its capacity to make an impression on us changes?
Yeah, how does it change? Because it can work the other way also. Because something, and here I can't help but get into design aspects. If something is designed very differently from what we are familiar with, take any kind of minimal design, for example, and we're not, supposing we're not used to a very minimalist language, and we suddenly come across something that's so sparse, we still have a response to it. It hits us. We still look at it because it's so different.
Right.
Yeah, I think also sometimes when we're looking at something very familiar in when it's a mass of other familiar things in a context that's very well known to us, there's also a kind of decision, I think, to isolate things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
When we see something that we're attracted to, I think we make the decision to ignore the other things. Yes. So there's a kind of, in the same way that I think that maybe in the same way that time is malleable, well, as we're experiencing things, the space around us also becomes malleable in the sense that we decide to ignore certain aspects of the space. But I don't know if that is something that we break down into language, or it's intuition, or it's a pre-language thing. I'm not quite sure how to phrase it.
Yeah, so the way we experience space, it does that, and the way we experience, let's say, a specific, the way we notice a specific item, let's say a poster, does it involve two different kinds of vision and attention? So does the space and the environment involve a meandering kind of attention? So we know immediately if we are in a forest or if we are on a street, and we know that before we know it, like we just know it instantly.
Exactly.
And so is that different from the specific attention we offer to an item, to an object?
I think it's, if you're in a forest, there is always the visual element, so there is that attention you are paying to that. But if you remove the visual element, there is something even before the visual element, where there are the other senses which are also giving you input into where you are in the space and defining the mood in a way.
Yeah, and I'm referring to those other ways of sensing what the situation is, right? And I'm asking, or if those other ways work much faster than our visual way of processing information, like where we are and what we are doing. So do we know if we are blindfolded in the forest? Do we know it's a forest even before we need to hear the sounds of animals and trees and?
Right, before the senses.
Yeah.
So it depends on what senses are open.
Yeah. But Prayas, are you saying even before the senses? Is there anything before the senses?
Yeah. So because the way a space makes an impression on us is by shaping or molding our world actually, right? So if we are looking around us in a building, then for all we know, if we forget everything else, for all we know, this is a world.
Right.
For a moment, we can imagine that nothing else exists. This is it. This is where we are. And that feels something very specific. So where we are right now. So in that sense, I'm talking about that immediacy of how a space makes us feel, how a space makes an impression on us.
And I'm unable to.
Go ahead, Satya.
No, I'm unable to see how I can see the sense is what makes the sense organs are what give me the inputs as to my brain. If I don't have any input coming to my brain, how do I perceive space, or what is the meaning of where I am if I don't have sensory inputs?
So that's the way we look at our world, right? For example, the way we understand what our world is beyond sensory information. So
but Prayas, this is actually what I feel is this is, if you start including more senses, it's complicating the question. Now I'm trying to pull it back to the question we're trying to frame here. And the one thing we do know about it is that if you're looking at a poster, just let's look at a poster, it's visual. And so if we still have to get back to how that poster is. I don't know if we need to rephrase the question, but how are we actually formulating the question? Because there are so many variables. I think we need to see how many variables. I mean, everything. The context is variable. The time is variable. Our experience is variable.
But aren't these all the variables that go into answering this question of how long? Because if we talk about something even before sensory, if we start there, we say that consciousness, then there is some sensory input, there is some blob perception, there is some typography perception. So if we take each one of those as, and I'm trying to zoom out in the sense, individual experience is different, obviously. So the exact amount of length of time might be different for each person. We have to accept that. But the criteria that go into determining how long it is, those criteria will be similar for everybody, is what I'm trying to think. Because, if you're a human.
Yes. So,
you're exposed to this media play a role? Like, say, I'm in a moving object, say in a car or something. Cycle. And this Dilwale poster with the field has caught my eye. Would that play a role? I'm wondering whether I would be like, oh, if I see it on a street, I would think, oh, maybe they're showing this movie somewhere. I want to know where and when. So I would try to search for that information. And if I was looking at it in a gallery space, then look at the design and artistic perspective of the composition or something else. So I'm wondering whether exposure to media would play a criteria in this.
Yeah. If it's just a flash from a car versus walking and you're seeing it versus you're actually going to a gallery to see it. So the intent almost.
True. Yeah, I think the intent of what my brain associates with it and wants to get out of it.
But the intent looks at the subject, that it looks at you. But if I don't look at you, if I think about the poster, and the poster is somehow strategizing or scheming or making a conspiracy to somehow be seen by you. So if you look at it from the poster's perspective and not from your perspective, then if you don't look at intent, right, and if you look at the pretext, if you look at the pretext of how the poster's designer and maybe the publicist decides to place the poster, where the publicist decides to place the poster, that you're noticing it will make the maximum impression.
Right.
So does it make sense to frame the question, limit the question to either the viewer or the poster?
I agree. I think we should go to one or the other, and I think we sort of started off from the viewer's perspective.
Yeah.
Right. No, but well, I think with the
I think there's also the last few minutes of discussion we are talking about the poster as if it had some sort of, like, it could fool you or lead you astray. I think that only happens, it's as if we have seen the poster already. So we always come to experience with a memory of that experience in a way, right? So that we have certain expectations when we see something. And as a viewer, like, the presence of those expectations also allows for the possibility of a different message coming through. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I guess it's related to the idea of memory and a kind of where that memory leads to certain expectations about certain objects or certain experiences. So there's a kind of there's the possibility of the subverting of that experience in a way.
I think like looking at the whole conversation, I would also rephrase my own, stating that the mood comes first, because I think it makes me think all these conversations that it doesn't come first actually, but everything is simultaneous. Like even if I'm there in Russia looking at the poster, I think that will be more, forcing me to look at the poster. And if I am here, then it will be like so all the mood happening, I mean the perceiving of the mood, or with that particular memory which I have to click, or if I don't have memory, still the environment makes me think about that poster or look at it. So everything happens very simultaneously, it happens at the same time, and that happens also very quickly.
So what you're saying is, when we ask a question, how long does it take, then it's all happening very quickly. Almost all are simultaneous and very fast.
No, it's not like that, but just to get an attention for that particular visual happens, like a very fast thing, because we all work in the same manner. We all have one kind of brain and whatever.
Yeah.
But then to perceive it and look at critically, and then making of looking at that poster an experience, it will have variations of time for each person.
Correct.
That's how I'm like now getting it.
So what you're kind of saying is that so many things are happening in that short span of time, very quickly. But that's only the initial recognition of the blob, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So many processes are simultaneously happening in the initial recognition of the blob.
But so if we are still talking about the two words, we're talking about attention and we're talking about impression. That it is all happening very fast is true, but do we need to then not make a question about how long, but then make it about how well. I mean, we make it about the quality of the communication. How well do I understand what a poster is about, right?
And I guess that's the question we had in our original thought experiment, that is to know what the movie poster is communicating. How long does it take for the comprehension, right? Is that what you're saying, Prayas?
Yeah, so let's say the poster has been designed for, I mean, not for a purpose. I'm saying the poster has been designed with certain elements, right? With certain content. And what we talk about then is the quality of how well is that content perceived. So, or do we perceive something else altogether? And if that is fine as well. But should we change our question? I mean, because if it's all happening very fast, if it's not about the perception of perception happening in a limited span of time, it's not about quantifying that. If it's not about quantifying that, then is it about qualifying it?
Actually, quantifying is going to be difficult because from our perspective in this group, I don't know everyone, but I feel like from my perspective, I don't know how to measure, from a biological perspective, I don't know how that is done.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the reason I'm saying that if it's happening so fast, if we are not going to be able to quantify it, if we're not going to be able to answer the question how long,
right? We should probably ask. We should probably say.
I don't think we'll get an answer to the question. I don't think that is our target. Our target is to just be able to frame the question. So,
true.
In other words, I think what we need to look at is what are the conditions for this experience to occur. If the question can successfully frame the conditions, I think that itself is an exercise, because
the conditions for what?
For the experience. Yeah.
Okay.
But I see it slightly differently. I feel like what are the criteria that what are the criteria that go into perception and comprehension? That's how I'm seeing this. So we listed a whole bunch of criteria here, time, space, right? Yeah. So these are all the criteria we've been coming up with quite a few that go into the process of perception and then comprehension, right?
That's
so maybe
true.
Instead of how long.
But we also arrived at the fact that all the criteria are continuously, they're just happening simultaneously. So everything is moving. We don't have anything that's static except for the poster.
Correct. So how long may not be the right question, but we can say what all goes into this comprehension, this process.
So I don't know if this would make sense to the group, but perhaps it's a matter of moving from impression to attention to comprehension. And then, so the question would be how well does the poster allow a transition from recognition to attention and then to comprehension?
That's one question, but I see that as the question from the side of the perspective of the poster creator.
So would you, Sumer, would you then think about this as the designer's perspective, that the designer is actually concerned about this, the comprehension happening in, because we mentioned design, so I'm just trying to pull you back into the conversation in the perspective of design.
Prayas, there is a specification when you do a poster. It's a very disciplined parameter sort of thing. It has a task to accomplish. It's like you are targeting something. It's like it's not a. It just. I was also wondering that what if we take away the information part of it, and we just have a very popular imagery like this, without saying anything, just imagine two people running in the yellow mustard fields, and those two people are not those people which we actually believe they are. So creating something but it is exactly been shot, and aesthetics is almost matching. Does it also then trigger to the same memory of the old version, like 10 years back, like, that folder opens up or not? Number one. I forgot number two, actually. Anyways, yeah. So,
Sorry.
yeah, sorry, I forgot again. Sorry.
But essentially you are saying that if we zoom out from the information and we look at just the capacity of the poster to trigger the
I'm
memory.
breaking the poster now and moving back to the imagery, like to the emotional part of it, or and purely see it from a photographic point of view, like and then will that affect the same attention and recognition, and then dipping into your memory?
I think this poses a question of aesthetics also, like
exactly.
So how if this particular image, because we are not even going into the details of if it's Shah Rukh Khan or somebody else, and yellow the same kind of film scene, and if the faces are replaced with somebody else, still before that, from the zooming out place, I mean, we are just seeing the similar kind of aesthetic, which is to the film poster.
Yeah. So, but there's two aesthetics, right? Like there's the aesthetics from the perspective of the designer, and there's the aesthetics from the perspective of the viewer.
Yeah.
So I think we've shifted now to the designer's perspective. Is it better to examine this question from the?
No, so
I think we have to decide which side we want to frame the question from.
No, so I think the designer's perspective is, see, the designer is always going to be interested in, let's say, making the best of the attention pie that he or she has, right? So if the viewer is sitting in a car, if the viewer is talking on a phone, if the viewer is on the street, no matter where the viewer is, if the attention pie is quite big, or if it's actually quite a narrow slice, the designer is going to work with all these scenarios. But I think, but we are talking about the post. We're talking about, when we're talking about the poster, I think we are talking about the poster already having gone past the designer and come into the world.
And I feel like even when the designer, if I think about it, the designer is trying to go into the viewer's perspective to design something. I mean, there is the designer's personality, but if the designer is trying to target a specific type of viewer, then they have to think from the perspective of the viewer. So it is valuable to think of this question from the viewer's perspective. That's what I think.
Right. I feel it's like pre-coded into your poster, that we as designers already know that if I design this poster in a certain way, then I will attract a certain category of people.
Right.
And there's a whole marketing that so
yeah.
So I've targeted it. So I've kind of pre-conditioned the person to come and get attracted to it.
Exactly.
I've laid out the bait.
Yeah, so, exactly.
So we actually have to work in the situations where the designer fails.
Okay.
Which means that they have.
What if you work in between?
What if you work in between? In between?
Yeah, in between, because where you don't situate it either from the designer's perspective or from entirely from the viewer's perspective. If you can take an average between the two.
So let's say you are saying
what's the goal though? What's the goal? Is the goal to get attention?
No, the goal is to find a universal question.
No, my question is not about that. My question is what are we trying to formulate? The question is, what are we trying to model here?
I think the question itself is quite interesting in a way that we are not looking at from the viewer's perspective, neither from the a designer's perspective, but we are looking at the question and how to formulate it. And that's what is more interesting to me in a way that it has been already stated that it's a Didi LJ poster, and then Yellow Field of Flowers and Simran, which are codes, in the
Right.
particular question to perceive a lot of other things. It's just a visual. We are actually visualizing, not even there. So for me, the question itself and how to formulate it is more interesting than anything else. Then we are looking at which perspective.
What caught my attention yesterday when I read the question was this name Murugan.
Exactly.
Okay.
I was like, okay, if it's a Murugan, maybe he's Italian.
Oh,
yeah. Hasn't seen any movies and he doesn't know a Kajol or a Shah Rukh Khan. And he's trying to relate somewhere with whatever he's seen, maybe a Rajnikant or I don't know who.
Exactly.
And I was stuck with Murugan for a very long time before I could proceed into thinking of what he would do.
No, so we are looking at the Murugan, right?
So we had imagined a viewer named Murugan who's like obviously a South Indian person who's coming to some other place where when we were discussing the question earlier, we had the name has a reason to be there.
So I don't think it makes too much of a difference there because you have the two main characters, like you have the Naika, hero and a heroine, which is kind of a universal idea.
Yeah, but we are placing the viewer as a foreigner. We're making the poster into a foreign object.
Yeah.
That is
so what is...
No, Don, we're trying to say something.
Because my experience of it after reading through the text and the thought experiment example, none of these things were recognizable to me. None of the names were recognizable to me.
Right.
It was just a matter of the field of flowers and these two figures moving toward each other. The names were, to me, placeholders for codes which I did not know.
Yeah.
Although I knew that I did not know. So that was very interesting, and I think it was a question of, for me, I interpreted the whole thing as when and how does communication happen, and I think when we kind of frame it that way, then we don't see it from the designer's point of view or the viewer's point of view. We're looking at this other thing that happens between them.
Right. So as Malvika was saying, the communication. Just to pause for a moment in this time, because it's a few minutes left for our day to conclude. Do you think we can all take a call on whether we can reconvene tomorrow at a time when we can also include some people who are interested to join in from the US, who have a very different time zone? So is 12:30 good for is it good for everyone?
12:30 IST?
Yes, 12:30 IST.
12:30 p.m. IST?
PM. Yes.
That's past noon.
That won't work in the US.
Oh, that will not work?
I don't think so.
That's late night for them.
Late night. Okay, so then if we work in the morning, like is 9:30 possible?
9:30.
9:30 morning, right?
Yeah, morning. 9:30 morning. Is it possible?
Yeah. Yes,
9:30 a.m. IST.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's that for you, Don?
That is noon for me, which would I wouldn't be able to make it.
Okay.
Noon time. Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, no. Is it noon?
If it's morning for you guys.
Ahead.
Yeah, I'm ahead
You're
by
ahead.
2 hours 30.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were in the US.
Philippines.
Oh, sorry,
Okay,
sorry.
yeah.
My
Okay.
mistake.
No problem.
Okay.
Yeah, then you're ahead. Okay.
No, so yeah, can you quickly take a call? We can try to take a call. So Dawn, which is the what is the earliest possible for you then? Is 8 a.m.
PM would be better for me.
or PM would be better?
PM. Yeah.
All right.
Which I think would match up with you guys well.
Right, but Sumer, later at night is not possible for you, right? Because you said you're at coach. So
but what time is what are you suggesting now?
So we are considering if 9:30 is in the night, but is that workable for you?
That works for me.
That works for you, but
if it works for everybody, we'll try to work it out.
Okay, so Kritika, does that work for you? 9:30 p.m.
After 12 noon India time is good because that doesn't mean I have to wake up super early. So
yeah. So Jinal, does that work for you?
It's AM or PM?
PM 9:30
p.m.
Yeah, it does work for me fine.
Okay, so Sumer, is it going to be possible for you to work it out?
Okay, 12:30. 12:30 is fine.
Yeah, 9:30 p.m. is what we're talking about right now.
Today, right?
9:30 p.m. tomorrow. So
tomorrow. Okay.
Saturday night IST 9:30 p.m.
Yeah, Saturday night.
If this is the final thing, then we'll have to work it out. There is no other way.
No, but because we're just trying to navigate between all the time zones.
No,
what about 7:30?
Is 7:30 is earlier better? Is 7:30 possible?
Much
Malvika
better.
is so Malvika, is 7:30 possible for the US time zone?
It's going to be a little early, but I can ask them to, I can ask if they can
I think
just manage that.
I think it'll be 8 or 7 a.m. in California.
6.
Yeah.
California will be 6. 7:30 will be 6 o'clock California time.
Okay, so let's say we work with these.
I'll just request that. Yeah. Let's try to do 7:30 then.
7:30 then. Yeah. Okay. So Dawn, that's good for you. That's good for you.
Yeah. 7:30 IST, right?
Yes.
7:30
Yeah, 7:30
PM.
evening. Yeah.
PM IST. That works for me.
Yeah. So tomorrow, we have a lot of variables today, and tomorrow, hopefully, we should have also a few mathematicians or scientists, let's say.
Yeah, Rishi will be joining. Yeah.
Yeah, who will help us maybe model these variables into an actual set of correlations that we can call an equation of sorts. So that will be what we are moving towards. Yeah. So thanks everyone for joining today, and I hope to see you tomorrow at 7:30 p.m.
Yes, 7:30. Yes, 7:30.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks
great.
everyone.
All right.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks so much, guys.
Bye. Thanks.
bye bye.
Good night.